All right, welcome to the Pangburn Philosophy Podcast. This is Travis Pangburn. I must admit that I am suffering a bit from a cold today, and I was also suffering through it when I recorded the last podcast with Douglas Murray. But I thought that I would totally be able to hide it from you guys and everyone. And I listened back to it and I was like, I can't even hide this from myself. So it didn't really work out the way I thought it would. But with how many of these conversations I want to have, I think my health is the least of everyone's worries when they come on to listen, because they are not coming on to listen to me, they're coming on to listen to my guests. And today I am the luckiest guy on the planet because I got Robyn Blumner, who is the president and CEO of the Richard Dawkins Foundation and the executive director of the Center for Inquiry. So she doesn't sleep. She doesn't. She obviously has a twin that's running around posing as her as well, because there's no way someone can do this much work, can they, Robyn?
Somehow it gets done, Travis, and that's because I have a great team of people helping me out. You know, all of those Christmas elves.
Yeah. So I have to say this. I have to restate that your second position is the executive director for the Center for Inquiry, not to be confused with the National Enquirer. And the reason why I say that is because I've had some friends ask me for some, good resources on science and reason. I want to be more scientifically literate, and where can I go? And one of my resources was Center for Inquiry, but somehow that got twisted in their mind, thinking that it was the National Enquirer, and I started seeing them post these articles from the National Enquirer, and they were tagging me in it. But
we are about 180 degrees from the National Enquirer. We are the antidote to fake news.
Yeah.
But people do ask, what is the Center for Inquiry and what do you do? And my response is at least to offer them up our mission, which is to foster a secular society based on reason, science, freedom of inquiry, and humanist values. We are looking for a world where people value evidence and critical thinking, where superstition and prejudice subside, and where science and compassion guide public policy. If the world looked like that, our job would be done, and I'm working every day to be out of a job.
Right.
Unfortunately, we're far from that nirvana, and it's in some sectors of society, including your neighbor to the south,
Yes.
where I live in the United States, it seems we're moving further away from it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the words coming out of the mouths of the leaders and the people that are supposed to be informing policy is a little bit terrifying. Not only down in the States, where it's easy to point at someone like Donald Trump, but up in Canada, like some of the crap that is coming out of the mouths of some of the leaders, a lot of sexism and a lot of apparent non-racism, but the racisms and the norms of racism and sexism that are coming out in Canada right now is absolutely insane. And also, I mean, and it's I hate to just pick on the religious community as well, because we have this regressive left, these gangs forming that want to shut down free speech. Particularly in Canada, for a lot of our events, we're even being asked to cancel events, although we haven't been forced. But what do you think on this regressive left, and how it seems to coincide with people who don't want to give their child a measles vaccine?
I am a firm supporter of freedom of speech. I do think people get their terms mixed up a bit as to what constitutes expressive freedom. In the United States, we have the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which protects people from government-sponsored censorship. It does not mean that a boycott, for instance, of sponsors of the Sean Hannity program shouldn't occur. Certainly, if you disagree with Sean Hannity and you want their sponsors to know, you can organize a boycott of their sponsors and possibly exert some pressure and influence on those sponsors to pull out from Fox News commentators. That's not actually a violation of expressive freedom as it's understood legally within the United States. It's only when the government engages in censorious acts is the Constitution violated. And I really think we need to be a little more careful when we talk about free speech to demark the difference between illegal acts by the government and perfectly legal acts that are activists trying to shut down the speech or the messages of other people whose ideas they find untenable. I may not agree with those actors. Often it depends on who the target is, to be frank. But it's not illegal to do so, and it's not a violation of your free speech rights.
Right.
As to the regressive left, I call myself a liberal. I am a liberal. I'm a very progressive person politically. That's irrelevant, however, to my organization. We are politically neutral within the Center for Inquiry. And I want to say this to people who are fighting amongst themselves, but who generally have the same set of values, and they would like society to progress in the same general direction. We have so much more in common than we have things that differentiate us, things that divide us. I really wish we would keep our eye on the prize, which is to challenge the policies and the values of people like Jerry Falwell Jr. and Pat Robertson and Betsy DeVos and Jeff Sessions, people who are truly dangerous to principles of the separation of church and state, principles of humanistic goodness. I want to lock arms with my fellow liberals. I don't want to argue over small points of who said what and who got injured by what someone said. And I want to work with people across the progressive spectrum to advance the policies that will better mankind and will promote human progress.
Right. And I mean, essentially what we're talking about is having scientific platforms in government. Like, it seems like, especially with who you guys currently have in office, it seems like, scientific discovery and anything, I guess any kind of dollars that would be allotted to experimentation or science and reason, it just seems like a very low priority.
And people are being put in charge of agencies, scientific agencies, that don't have scientific backgrounds or who have worked in opposition to the mandate of the agency. I mean, Scott Pruitt is a perfect example at the Environmental Protection Agency. He spent his career suing the EPA and trying to roll back environmental protections, and now he's the fox in charge of that henhouse. And we're seeing the results. We know that there's very little appetite for investment in science coming out of this administration, and it's going to be doing real sustained damage to the kind of pure science that only the government can fund, because private industry is not going to step into that role.
Yeah. I mean, it's so great to see people like Elon Musk who are kind of pushing the envelope on technology, and I see him as investing in the right way. There are some positives happening with regards to the scientific community, I think, in the States, but it doesn't help when funding's being cut, or, I think this huge problem, and we get it up in Canada too, is that for some reason, scientific discovery, it's hard for a lot of these leaders to see the potential price tag on creating the new technology that all other countries are going to want.
It's very hard to predict the future there, of course,
Right.
and that's why pure science is so important, and the investment in it is likely to come only from the government, because private industry has to typically report to shareholders on a quarterly basis. They're not
Right.
going to be investing huge sums in a endeavor without clear profit results on the other end. So we will see what happens. There are certainly plenty of people in government who are not tied to the political operatives of this administration, and I think they're still plugging away doing the job that they were hired to do.
Right.
So I'm hopeful that for the most part things will continue on in a reasonably advanced way, and the administration will only be able to do damage at the margins. But that is a result that we will see in hindsight only.
Right. So what's an average day work day look like for you at the foundation and at the center?
Well, let me tell you a little about some of the work that we do.
Sure.
Mostly, I'm the administrator, so I supervise a lot of these programs as opposed to doing them. But we have a large staff of about 40 employees who execute all of the programs and policies of the Center for Inquiry. And I like to say that we challenge the mythologies that people cling to without evidence. So our work spans the spectrum from challenging the mythology of religion, those religious beliefs that people believe in without evidence, to challenging the more fantastical ideas that people hold on the left, such as that vaccines cause autism, which has been debunked many times, or that GMOs are harmful in some way, which also is wrong-headed and anti-science, and puts whole societies at risk when, for instance, communities in Africa blanketly bar the introduction of GMOs into their food supply, and as a result, a bacteria wipes out an entire crop.
That is insane.
So
Insanity.
So we challenge all of those ideas. So some of the things are that we've got on our plate right now include bringing CVS to court. Now, I don't know if you have CVS as a retail pharmacy in Canada, but it's one of the largest pharmacies and drugstores in the United States.
I've never heard of CVS. I don't think so. It must be just down there.
It could just be in the U.S. This is one of the corner pharmacies. You'll see them populating most cities in the U.S., and they sell homeopathic products.
Right.
Now, of course, it's legal to sell sugar pills and water pills. What's illegal is to make claims about the efficacy of these medications in scare quotes that are not true. And what happens is the pharmacies will nest homeopathic remedies right next to science-based medicine.
Right.
So a consumer comes in, they don't know what homeopathic medicine is, which is essentially just water, and they see that it says natural on it. Well, of course it's natural. It's water, and they buy it because it right next to a cold remedy. It's right next to an earache remedy.
Right.
And they assume that there is some science behind this medicine, and it will address their ill, when in fact there is no evidence that homeopathic remedies do anything beyond the placebo effect.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a complete waste of money, and it's a consumer fraud. And some of the American regulatory agencies have issued guidelines as to how to alert consumers to that fraud, which is basically to say that there's no evidence that this works, and that it's based on an 18th century notion of scientific medicine, which we've advanced in major ways since then. It didn't work then. It doesn't work now.
Yeah.
And so we're challenging, after asking CVS to make this clear in their stores and online, and being ignored, we are now in the process of filing a lawsuit against CVS for consumer fraud, essentially. We have a wonderful program called Secular Rescue. So your listenership may not know that there are 13 countries around the world for which being an atheist is a capital offense.
Yeah.
And that means if you profess your non-belief, you can be brought up on criminal charges, you can be prosecuted, and if found guilty, you can receive the death penalty.
Right.
CFI has a program where we rescue people who are in this predicament. So we help them with financial awards that help them get visas, plane tickets, relocation money, if they are being persecuted by the government or by sort of violent extremists in their country for being an atheist, for being an atheist activist. And we have literally saved dozens of lives as a result of that. And that is an ongoing program. It's only getting bigger. There's only more requests. They come in from countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia. I mean, these are the countries that you could probably predict there'd be a problem within, and it's true. Mm-hmm. So it's a growing program. It's very expensive to do it, but we're absolutely committed to it.
Yeah, and you couldn't be doing more noble work, really. And it's true that, you know, so many of us that get to be free thinkers, we just, you know, imagine being somewhere where we couldn't even do that in a safe way. I've been so lucky to meet some of the people that you guys have saved, Robyn, and I mean, you guys must be proud of doing this. This is like you actually saving lives, not in a sense of, you know, changing people's minds on ideas, but literally spending the money and helping these people so that they can survive.
We call it an underground railroad for atheists.
Yeah.
And I assume this will be one of our biggest programs going forward because the need is so great. And we don't necessarily get people into Canada or the U.S. or Germany or England, although those are places that we can help people escape to.
Right.
But we just need to get them to a place where they don't fear that they'll be slashed with a machete if they walk in public.
Yeah, I mean, just as a bit of a note on that, even from my standpoint, I was just buying a new life insurance package, and I think it is 19 countries on that package, because when they did the research on who I was and the things I promoted and talked about, they were like, yeah, we can't cover your life insurance for these 19 or whatever it was countries. So this is taken seriously by this is taken seriously by everyone, it seems, even in the insurance game.
It goes to show you that you know, this is a dangerous world, and it's a dangerous world for the kinds of ideas that are essential to human progress.
Yeah, and running this program, it must really help. A lot of people might not know, but you received your law degree from New York University School of Law, and you are you a current member of the New York State Bar?
I am. I think technically I've retired. In other words, I could reactivate it at any point. But because I don't practice law, I don't need to maintain that live license. But I passed the New York Bar, and I'm, I have an attorney in good standing, retired at the moment.
Well, that's I guess the reason why I brought it up was in these situations of, helping people get out of other countries and, dealing with the lawsuit with the, I forget the pharmaceutical agency.
CVS.
I mean, your law background must come in handy.
It certainly does. Obviously, a big part of the work that CFI does is to protect church-state separation, especially in the U.S., and knowing the law, having a background in civil liberties, is essential to being a spokesperson for those issues and for knowing what cases to bring. We are also fighting against religious privilege in the United States, which is rampant, especially now. And so one of the programs we have is called the Secular Celebrant. So in the U.S., in most states, you can be married by a religious leader. It can be anyone with that credential. But if you are a non-believer, an atheist, agnostic, humanist, and you want to be married by somebody who's a secular celebrant, in many states that's not permitted. You can go to City Hall and be married by the city clerk, but it's someone who is important, renowned in your community who will marry you doesn't have the power of the state to solemnize that marriage. So we have a program called Secular Celebrants where we put people through a one-day training program, and then we certify them, basically saying that they are as qualified now to marry, to be officiating at marriages as any religious leader. And we bring these cases to court when need be, if a state still denies the rights of secular celebrants to marry. So we're saying this is one of those cases of religious privilege that exists in the United States, where just by dint of your religious leadership post, you have the right to marry people. Secular people do not.
Right.
We're also heavily involved in trying to get a humanist chaplain in the U.S. military. There's a growing cohort of non-believers throughout the United States and within the military. Not only non-believers, but people who say they're not religiously affiliated. So if you're talking about young people, about a third of young people in the U.S. say they have no religious affiliation. And at least 10% of Americans are openly atheist or agnostic. So we're talking tens of millions of people, and certainly a large subset of people in the U.S. military. But there are no humanist chaplains. So if a soldier wants to have a counseling session with a chaplain, and that person and the soldier is non-religious, there's nobody that they can go to.
Right.
There's no one who they feel comfortable talking to.
Yeah, and what you're describing does not sound like a country where there's active separation of church and state. So.
Yeah, sometimes we do look like hypocrites, don't we? I mean, we're so overtly religious in so many ways that entangles with the government, and yet we're supposed to be the model country for the separation of church and state.
Right. So,
we're trying to hold the U.S. to its promise, and that is part of the work that we do. But we do have international work as well, and I want your Canadian listenership to know that that some of the work that we do really does impact Canada and the rest of the world. Not just secular rescue, but we hold a special consultative seat at the UN Human Rights Council, and we go to Geneva regularly to speak up on behalf of atheists and non-believers' rights around the world. And specifically, we challenge the role of blasphemy laws around the world because they're used as tools of repression against non-believers.
Yeah.
And we're one of the few organizations out there representing the non-belief community in these international bodies.
Yeah. When we did the event in Vancouver with Richard, I think it was 2.5 years ago now, but I remember when we announced doing that event, there started to be a lot of talking around this old blasphemy law that still existed in Canada law, and basically right after that event concluded, it seemed like it was right after the event was over, the law was announced that it was being abolished from our book. So I think there is a bit of a correlation between what we did with that event when you guys were here and what happened to that law.
Well, I love hearing that. That's really exciting.
Yeah, and I'll probably do. It could have been a coincidence, but in my mind, it was like we announced that we were doing this big event with Richard, and there was a lot of conversation happening around the event. And yeah, then it seemed like people were asking, even on the radio stations across Canada, just like, what does everyone think about this, ancient blasphemy law? And sure enough, it was abolished quite soon after.
Well, I wish other countries would take a page from Canada because it's amazing. There are dozens of nations around the world with blasphemy laws, including Ireland. I don't know if you saw the news about Stephen Fry being investigated for blasphemy by the Irish courts. That eventually got dropped, but nonetheless, just because he raised questions about God's existence, he was the subject of an investigation.
Yeah, that's and it's unfortunate. I mean, I'm bringing a massive event over to Dublin soon here with Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson are going to be chatting with Douglas Murray in between them, and I mean, in my opinion, I think a lot of Christians would even say that Jordan Peterson is quite blasphemous as well, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of blasphemy happening there, so it'll be interesting to see the reaction.
One of the other things we're doing in the international space is we have something called the Translations Project. So we noticed that there's a bootleg copy of The God Delusion, which is Richard Dawkins' premier book on atheism, that's been translated into Arabic and offered for free on the internet. Richard gets no royalties for this book, but he's happy to see it out there. And apparently it's been downloaded 13 million times around the world, with a significant proportion of those downloads coming out of Saudi Arabia. And that really sparked an idea for the Richard Dawkins Foundation to sponsor its own translations of Richard's books. And with the permission of the publishing world and Richard's literary agent, we carved out a group of books in a group of languages where Richard's going to get his books translated into those languages and then offered for free as a PDF download on the internet. So we're in the process of doing that. We are hiring professional translators and readback professionals, and we are going to get The God Delusion and a number of his evolutionary biology books translated into Arabic, Pashtun, Indonesian, Farsi, basically the languages that are most dominant in the Muslim world.
Right.
We think that we think the impact of that could be absolutely huge.
I agree. I mean, these are the kind of reason grenades that we need in this war of ideas, and this is. I just love hearing that the amount of downloads that are happening in these countries. It's exciting, and it removes any kind of fear in my mind. That science and reason is ever going to lose out to faith as we move forward in this world. I'm not. I'm pretty positive when thinking about that prospect.
I hope so. I think so as well. And the internet is doing a great job distributing this, as you say, reason bombs. I love that, to all corners of the world in such an inexpensive way. I mean, we our project for this year for the translations is a $200,000 project, which may sound like a lot of money, and it is, but it's nothing compared to what it would have cost, just 50 years ago.
Oh yeah.
To get something translated and distributed around the world. So really, the cost of this of these reason bombs going out there and exploding is minuscule.
Yeah. Well, I see. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'm just sort of caught up in the enthusiasm of the idea that we're going to be moving the needle on human progress, and I think what you do, Travis, is so important. I mean, you're bringing these ideas to the public on a regular basis. You are putting people together on stage who bring out the ideas in a way that is entertaining, so people want to listen to it, but also I think is a great multiplier. You get people talking online, and it really engages, especially a younger cohort, which is what we need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thanks. We've. Our audience is growing rapidly, and we're noticing that we are attracting quite a new, fresh, young audience that wants to be involved with our events as volunteers or calling in. We are creating a low income kind of foundation for Pangburn philosophy, where we're going to actually make sure that a large portion of tickets are available at all of our events for low-income people or people who absolutely can't afford. So there's going to be ways to sign up for our subscription and actually receive some free tickets to events, because it's important for me whenever I bring modes of artistic inspiration or scientific inspiration into a community. There are those out there that love to come for the entertainment. They love the authors. They want to get their book signed. But there are those out there that could, this being exposed to something like this could be that source of inspiration that helps them to the next positive level in their life. And I just think art and science are the best modes to deliver that kind of inspiration.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And as someone who has traveled now with Richard Dawkins for a number of years and has seen what people say to him when they're getting their book signed, I think it's transformational. Mm-hmm. When people are exposed to these ideas. It opens their minds. There's one after the next person who comes up to Richard and says, "You changed my life. Your book changed my life." And they're not just grasping the God delusion. They're grasping his science books as well. You made me decide to go into science as a career. I was imprisoned by the dogma of the Catholic Church, and I thought I was going to hell because of my thoughts. And your book, The God Delusion, released me from that prison.
Right.
You allowed me to see the true nature of reality, and that you made me understand that this is the only life we have, and that I have the opportunity to live it to its fullest, knowing that I have to appreciate my loved ones here and now. You know, that's the kind of thing that I get to hear by sitting or standing nearby Richard when he's signing books. It's so motivating and inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, the world is such a better place because of the genius he's brought to the table when it comes to scientific education and what he did with the selfish gene. And it's just, Richard really has, I think, changed the most minds in modern history here. And it's so it's so great that he has someone like you, Robyn, to help him out. I know you help him out so much when he's out on the road, and I did want to ask, how is Richard's health recently since the stroke? And
his health is excellent. He's fully recovered from the stroke, as far as I can tell. It only affected his motor skills. It didn't affect any kind of mental processes. So, of course, we're all grateful for that.
Yes.
Not grateful to anything supernatural, just generally grateful.
Yes.
And maybe we're grateful to medical science because they helped him recover from the stroke, giving him rehabilitation. And he had some issues on the left side of his body, worked through them, and as far as I can tell, there's no lasting effect.
Right.
Although he will say that his singing voice was affected, which he says is not a problem for the world. It's just a problem for him.
Yeah. Well, maybe it should be a problem for the world. Music tour coming up. So on October 22nd, we'll be in Calgary. Richard and Robyn will be there. I think you're coming up to Calgary. Is that right, Robyn?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll
great.
be there.
Yeah, and Richard's going to be on stage speaking with the amazing planetary scientist Carolyn Porco. I'm super excited to be in the same room as Carolyn because I admire her, and I think she's one of the great science communicators out there.
She is. She is amazing and so interesting. If anyone wants a little preview of Carolyn, go to her TED Talk, and you'll be blown away.
Yes, I totally agree. That's when I was first introduced to Carolyn, and that talk was like, I felt like a kid in my first science class. And
her enthusiasm for
ahead.
science is infectious too. And of course, what they learned about Saturn and Saturn's moons within the project that she led is fascinating. So, and only she can tell it.
Right. Yeah. And I'm so excited to set up so many more events with her. We're trying to put together a lecture tour for her right now, and I just think the world needs more Carolyn Porco for sure. October 23rd. Now, this hasn't been publicly announced yet, but I thought I would just make it do kind of a soft announcement for our listeners that on October 23rd, Richard will be in Chicago, and he's going to be on stage with evolutionary theorist Brett Weinstein. And that is going to be an event that is very much going to circle around biology and evolutionary theory. And I would suggest everyone have a look at Brett Weinstein's work because he has become one of the great communicators, I think, on evolutionary theory, and he's got some very interesting views on the way religion evolved, and whether, and he talks a lot about whether this was a necessary evolution or this was something derived from art that seemed more inspirational or something like that. Are you familiar with Brett much, Robyn?
Just at arm's length,
Yeah.
really not. I haven't read anything by him.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure he is published yet. I think he's working on his first book, but yeah, he's been on the kind of the podcast circuit, and I think they're going to have a really interesting conversation. I think Richard's really going to enjoy it. And then on November 1st in New York City, Richard will be speaking with theoretical physicist and mathematician Brian Greene, who again is another one of my favorite science communicators.
Brian is brilliant.
Yeah.
I think that will be a tremendous event with both of them on stage.
Yeah, it'll be. I think we're gonna have a packed house at the Beacon Theater, so it's going to be, electric, and yeah, it's just gonna be one giant science-gasm, essentially. Well, oh, and
do you mind if I mention a couple of events as well?
Yes, go ahead. Let us know.
So Richard will be actually with Carolyn Porco in 2 other events in this fall. He will be in Dallas on October 28th and in Nashville on October 30th. Both of those events, he'll be sharing the stage with Carolyn Porco. And the Center for Inquiry is putting on something called PsyCon, which will be in Las Vegas October 18th through 21st. It's a big skepticism convention. Anyone who's interested in that field should come because it's really great. We have speakers that include, of course, Richard Dawkins, and Stephen Fry will be there, the great comedian and thinker from England.
Awesome. Yeah.
Steven Pinker is coming, and the amazing Randy will be there. So it's a star-studded event.
Awesome. That has me salivating. I might have to take a trip down to Vegas for that.
Oh, please do. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, and I suggest everyone head down to Vegas for that event because I think it's going to be wicked. I've been hearing a lot of chatter in the skepticism community about it, and yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And who knows, I might head down there. I was talking to Matt Dillahunty about it, and I think he's going to go check it out as well. So you'll be in some good fun company. Robyn, last question. When can I buy a book by you?
I've been asked that through most of my career.
Yep.
And right now, there's nothing on the horizon, but you'll be the first to know, Travis.
Okay, good, because I want to do all of your book tour and everything. So whenever you're ready, I'm on board.
You got it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much.
There's no one I would rather work with than you.
Sweet. All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today, Robyn. And I look forward to seeing you soon. And yeah, anything else you want to mention?
Just that you keep doing what you're doing because you're changing the conversation. I think we're all lucky that you decided to put your imprint on promoting science, reason, and art.
All right. Thanks so much, Robyn. And everyone, please let art and science inspire. Thank you.